What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Hawks Nest, where this week we're going to be talking about the Week 6 matchup versus Purdue at Kinnick Stadium. Iowa is a 2.5-point favorite, and the over-under is 38.5. So last week, Michigan State, before the game, there was some drama going on as former Northwestern coach Pat Fitzgerald was on the sideline with his two sons for a campus visit. Iowa ended up getting the ball to start the game, which is really rare that they decide to choose that. And they started off in a really wide offensive scheme and passing to the wide receivers pretty heavy. Three out of the first five targets were to a wide receiver. So that was pretty shocking right off the bat. Opening drive, Cade looked really good. I think he ended up hitting all but one pass, which was dropped by Eric All. They had to settle for a field goal on that opening drive. Second drive, Iowa started at their own 2. And on the second play of the drive, Cade tried to scramble, but ended up falling to the ground with a non-contact injury. Ended up being an ACL tear, causing him to be out for the rest of the season. So therefore, Deacon Hill was inserted. He's had some playing time throughout the season, but it's mostly been garbage time. And a little bit about Deacon Hill. He's a 6'4", 250-pound quarterback with a cannon. The rest of the first quarter, he didn't really do much. He was trying to find his footing. And the first quarter ended with a tie 3-3. In the second quarter, Michigan State started with the ball. They were able to drive down the field pretty easily, but Iowa's bend-don't-break defense held them to only 3. And on the following defensive drive, Iowa's defense finally decided they wanted to play, and Iowa's All-American Cooper DeJean ended up getting his first interception of the season. And the following drive, Iowa finally started to get a groove. We finally got to see what a healthy Eric All looks like again. He had a 32-yard reception where he actually showed his speed, ran past multiple DBs for Michigan State, and ended up finishing that drive with another reception for a touchdown. Going into half, Iowa led 10-9. And the second half, it was mostly a defensive battle. Iowa was able to capitalize on a few more interceptions, 2 more interceptions in the second half, and a fumble. And then the special teams finally came to play with Cooper DeJean returning a punt for 70 yards. Ended up leading Iowa to a victory over the Spartans 26-16. So heading into this week's game, some of the biggest questions I have is, for one, it was how serious Cade's injury was. Like I said, we found out that it was a season-ending ACL tear. And then the follow-up to that is how comfortable and how quickly can they get Deacon Hill comfortable in the offense. So Deacon Hill, he decided to transfer to Iowa really late in the spring, after originally deciding to transfer to Fordham once he left Wisconsin. He looked more comfortable as the game went on, but he really struggled with his accuracy and trying to find the right touch on the ball. He went 11 for 27 for 115 yards, but his QBR was only 23.5 out of a perfect score would have been 158.3. And that was mostly because Michigan State crowded the box, weren't able to run, and they forced Deacon Hill to try to beat them with his arm. Number 2, how do the wide receivers continue to build off this game? Iowa wide receivers had a breakout game for them, hauling in 6 receptions for 64 yards. I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but for Iowa's offense, that's astounding. We saw the offense targeting them frequently and early in the game, which is something that they haven't done previous to last week. But as the game went along, the wide receivers missed a lot of opportunities to be more productive with drops. Vines had 2 drops at the end of the first half that could have led to more points. And then also, I don't know if it was just poor weather conditions, but they really struggled with their footing on their cuts of the routes. Number 3, when will Iowa's offensive line finally start to gel? The team really struggled all season, allowing multiple pressures and sacks. So far, they've let up 11 sacks. They struggled in the run game last week. They had 27 rushes for only 61 yards and no touchdowns. Iowa's offense is known for producing stud offensive linemen, and over the last couple of years, it just hasn't been there. So I'm looking for one of the transfers, either Firth or Parker, finally stepping up and being a leader that the offensive line needs. And number 4, has the defense finally hit their stride? While they're still giving up over 300 yards, the defense finally started to look, or at least have a glimpse of what they looked like in the past. Um, they've started to become more physical, blitzing, putting more pressure on the quarterback. They forced 4 turnovers last week against the Spartans, 1 fumble, 3 picks. And like I said, including All-American Cooper DeJean's first pick of the season. Castro, I think, had his second pick. Um, so I'm looking for them to continue to build and start tightening down on the offense and hopefully getting those yardage allowed down back to where, as Iowa fans, a top 5 defense. So matchups to watch against Purdue. Starting off, it's going to be Iowa's front 7 versus Purdue's run game. Purdue has almost 800 yards rushing as a team through the first 5 games. They have 2 running backs at almost 300 yards each and a third that's already over 100 yards. They average 4.1 yards per carry, and as a team, they average 142 yards rushing, where Iowa gives up 134 yards on average a game. So I'm looking to see who's going to be more dominant, if Iowa's defense can finally start to tighten down, or if Purdue's going to have their way. Because if Purdue has their way, then the game's going to be one-sided. The second one, Iowa's secondary versus the wide receivers. Purdue's wide receivers. Purdue has 4 wide receivers with 190 plus yards this season, including 2 already over 300 yards. Dion Burke is their main target. He has 20 receptions for 377 yards and 4 touchdowns. He's averaging almost 20 yards a reception. And with Jermani Harris and Lee struggling still as quarterback 2, there isn't really a definitive number 2. I'm looking for Purdue to try to take advantage of that and try to stay away from Cooper. Number 3 is Deacon Hill versus Purdue's pass defense. Hill will finally have a full week of preparation with the number 1s. Hopefully start to get in a rhythm. And with Purdue's defense being ranked 102nd when it comes to pass, they allow on average 256 yards per game through the air. And if Iowa is able to get close to that 256 yards, that would be a season high in passing yards and the most since October 1st of 2022, when Spencer Petras threw for 246 yards against Michigan. So if we're going to see Iowa's offense take a step in the passing game, this is the week where they have the opportunity to do it, because Purdue's pass defense is one of the worst in the country. So some players to know, Purdue players to know. First, it's Hudson Card. He's a junior quarterback who transferred from Texas. Many know him as the guy who came in for Quinn Ewers against Alabama, almost led that upset last year. He has a 65% completion percentage this season and has almost 1,300 yards passing and 5 touchdowns. He may be one of the most athletic quarterbacks that Iowa's faced so far this year. When given the time, he can easily roll out of the pocket and burn you with his legs. And with Iowa being more of a zone defense and Purdue having stud wide receivers, a quarterback like Card can easily pick Iowa's defense apart. The second one is Tyrone Tracy. He is a senior running back for Purdue. I have him on here because as all Hawks know, he's a former Iowa wide receiver, transferred over to Purdue when him and Charlie Jones went. He made the position change to running back and has really taken off. He leads the Boilermakers in rushing yards with 288 and 5 touchdowns. He averages 6.3 yards per carry this season. And third is Dylan Thieneman. He is a freshman DB. He mostly plays safety. He leads the team in tackles with 45. He's gone over double digits in almost every single game, including a 14 tackle game against Syracuse earlier this year. And he's kind of a hawk for the nose. He's in on almost every single play. And he also is tied for the lead in interceptions for Purdue with 2. And for the prediction time, I kind of went back and forth on this one because Purdue always plays Iowa tough. It always comes down to one of the last plays of the game. And so for this week, I'm going with Iowa 24, Purdue 21. I don't think they reached that 25-point threshold that every Iowa fan is looking out for. But I do think Iowa's defense makes a play late in the game to secure them the win. And as always, I appreciate you all for watching, and make sure you follow the CFB Nation for all your college football news. And as always, go Hawks.